So I've already released a very quick Master Mode video that was about Yogi's thread, and I recorded that days ago, and I have a schedule which I release things. And since then, there's been a few different developments, other content creators making big videos about this, and then some serious astroturfing going on Spectrum. So I feel like it's my duty to try and sift through all this garbage and find the truth. So, by request, I was asked to kind of be a little bit nicer in my videos and stop with the name calling. So for this one, I'm going to do my best to do that. So recently, this idiot, AvengerOne, makes a really long video, like 40 minutes, of him meandering on about some stuff about Master Modes. And this, of course, has got his simps and brainless sycophants astroturfing the RSI website, Spectrum, with, calls to roll it back and calls to change everything. How the game is dying and how everything sucks now and this and that. So I decided to do a little bit of research, to kind of do some digging, and to also debunk, Reddit's favorite term, some of the nonsense and kind of go against the narrative and the arguments that are being presented by Dominoes1 and his followers. So let's waste no time. So the first argument that has been presented is that Star Citizen had accessibility issues under the old flight model, not because of the flight model, but because of the following on screen here. The first is the game had no tutorial, and because it had no tutorial, players are unable to understand the concepts behind tricording and doing 45-degree turns. So according to Dominoes1, the issue was not the flight model when it came to player accessibility or player activity, but rather the following: no tutorial, server instability, flight tuning and economy balance, ship performance mismatch. All of these things are completely correct and do not in any way, shape, or form support the old flight model over the current Master Mode flight model. None of these things have changed. The only thing that has changed is time. Years have gone by where we have had everything on the screen here, or rather have not had everything on the screen here. We've had no good tutorial. We've had no good serviceability. We've never had an economy. We've never had any interesting gameplay mechanics or anything to really do in the game. And ship performance has always been out of whack and all over the place. That has not changed. The time has changed. And people are fed up with how the game is in its current state, or the lack of game currently present. If you have not been following, the year 2024 of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ is a good year for gaming. We've had Helldivers, we have Space Marine 2, we have Deadlock, we have a new Tarkov wipe, we have Arena Breakout Infinite, we have a slew of new games coming out, and the year is not even over. There's new expansion packs for MMOs, there's new MMOs coming out. There are a lot of better options and better games to play that function and work that are not Star Citizen. That is why people are not playing Star Citizen. Not because Master Modes is out and they hate it. So another common thing that people are saying as a result of this video, and in general, is that, man, people aren't playing the game, it's dying, the statistics are showing it's more dead than ever. But what I like to do is I like to follow the money. I like to know what people are spending their money on. Because when people don't like something, they typically don't shovel out what little money they have for it. So, let's bring up this chart. This is a funding chart here. This is on the CCU game. On the right side here, I've included the months, and each of the months is color-coded. And the sampling that I'm going to give you is for the year 2023, and the current year, which is, of course, 2024. As we all know, this year is not over yet. I would like to draw your attention to the funding, in particular the funding of when 3.23 came out with Master Modes. The funding so far for this year is on par with or scheduled to surpass the previous year. And in some cases, for example, August, it has surpassed the previous year's funding when we did not have Master Modes. So, if Master Modes is truly this awful thing and it is killing the game, why aren't people voting with their wallets? You have one of two answers, and you can only pick one. One, normal people like Master Modes, or simply don't care, and are happy to keep supporting the product. Or two, Star Citizen players are stupid farm animals with no self-control, and will continue to give COG money despite the fact that they supposedly hate hate, in the strongest sense of the word, the Master Mode system. Which one do you think is more likely? I'll tell you what I think is more likely. People like it. They might not think it's perfect, but they like it. And they certainly like it enough to go ahead and continue to spend money on the product. So here's a quick edit that I'm doing to the video. This was brought to my attention after I had already finished this video by Fran. This individual is very smart. This information is all on them. They figured this out. But this person had the idea that we should go ahead and check the leaderboards and sort them by at least 1 hour and compare the versions to see what the differences were. So I said, okay, it's a pretty good idea. They figured it out. I wanted to verify the information. I didn't go as in-depth as they did, but here, check this out. So on the screen here, we are currently at 3.23, which is the version that introduced Master Modes to the game. So if we go to Squadron Battle and we sort by time played and we look for at least 1 hour, we're sorting this list by 100 people. So we're scrolling down here by 100 people. Let's go to the next page. All right, this is 200 people, 300 people, 400 people, 500 people, 600 people, 700 people, 800 people so far over 1 hour of playtime in Master Modes. And let's scroll up, and we can kind of figure out the rest here. So it cuts off around, where is it at? Right here. Just cut it off right here with this entry guy. So this is over 800 people playing Master Modes when it came out, 3.23. Now let's go ahead and check what this was like, activity level-wise, before Master Modes. So here we go. This is 3.22. We're going to buy the same metric. We're going to look for 1 hour. We're looking for Arena Commander. This is pre-Master Modes. So scroll down. We have 100, 200, 300, and we scroll up. So yeah, roughly 303 people to be exact. So you had 303 people play over 1 hour under the old flight model, compared to over 800 with Master Modes. And you're going to tell me that Master Modes did not increase activity and participation in combat? The other talking point that you see being astroturfed on Spectrum, and the argument is that the only ship type that matters is the Interceptor archetype. Now people are regurgitating this, and they are saying this and preaching it as gospel. Well, there are a couple things I have to say about that. There was this most recent esports tournament, and I know esports are stupid, especially in Star Citizen. You ain't gonna change my mind, even if your competitors are watching it. Esports, Star Citizen, gross. But you would assume that sick nerds who poop sock Star Citizen every day because they have nothing better to do with their lives or just don't value their time would naturally gravitate towards something that is the best. It is the de facto best, especially when, you know, a week's wage of McDonald's earnings is on the line to earn, that they would definitely want to play to win and get and fly whatever it takes to win. Well, in this picture, I'm not going to show the video, but in this picture we have AvengerOne in his Buccaneer. We have a guy named St. Nick's in his alien crap ship. And then we got Marky Mark in the alien crap ship. And we got Sin in, I think, another alien crap ship. It's hard to tell from this point of view. But we have one Interceptor, the Buccaneer. What was the result of this engagement? The result of this engagement was the Buccaneer being destroyed by a light fighter. An alien light fighter, of all things. So, you're going to sit there, you're going to tell me that the Interceptor is meta, and that's the only ship that matters. Yet, everybody who was flying the Interceptors in this stupid tournament was BTFO, was knocked the F out, gone, dunzos, dead, destroyed. But this is the most powerful ship type in the game? It's not. Here is the issue with the Interceptor, and let's talk about the reality of it. The Interceptor is only effective in a game that has no purpose and no point. That is not a Master Modes issue. That is a game design issue. That is the issue of having a game which has no true purpose, objective, or defined goals. If you are to hold an objective, whether it's hold the airspace above something stupid like Jumptown, or perhaps secure the airspace around the station, whatever it may be, something that requires you to stay and fight, the Interceptor is not your choice. if the game supported something like that. Again, an objective. If it has no objective and the only thing you're supposed to do is shoot people and run away and not die, then okay, the Interceptor is good for that. But when the cards are on the table and when money is on the line, and in this case, literally on the line, the only thing that matters is what has the longevity and the maneuverability to stay and fight. And that is not the Interceptor. So, for everybody who is simping and is regurgitating the same thing over and over and over again about Interceptors being the meta and the only ship that matters, you're wrong. You're dead wrong. There is, and always has been, a meta in this game, and it does shift. The biggest disservice to the game was the ridiculous performance of cannons. And that's a separate topic. And that is also not a master modes issue. That is a balance issue. Balance and master modes are two very different things. They're similar, but they're also different. One is a system, the other is a part of the system. The next argument made was that master modes has invalidated multi-crew. Well, let me tell you something, brother. Multi-crew has never been valid. The only reason why a quote-unquote multi-crew ship back before master modes actually was somewhat threatening and capable of defending itself wasn't just because of the engage ranges changing or anything master modes relating. It's because the turrets, the only component of multi-crew present in Star Citizen ever, by the way, is that the turrets had a ridiculously strong auto-aim. And they were given that auto-aim originally. If you check your Star Citizen history, and if you go back and you look at this change, they were given this ridiculous auto-aim to compensate for the fact that without it, they could not hit any ships due to the velocity. This is the same issue now. They cannot hit anything. The turrets suck. That is, again, not a master modes issue. That is a fundamental design issue and a balance issue. That is a fundamental issue with the multi-crew ships, and in particular, the turrets. Unless turrets are going to be overpowered, I've done many videos about this, but unless turrets are going to be overpowered, turreted ships, multi-crew ships, will never be worth bringing out. The reason why this was brought up is not because A1 cares about the multi-crew community. I assure you that most people who are light fighter players or single-seat fighter players don't care about the plight of the multi-crew player or the guy or gal who just wants to be a turret gunner. They don't care about you. They're going to call you a Bob or something else because they're stupid and socially awkward. The reality is, this was brought up to try and get sympathy and appear to be moderate. Because I promise you, if multi-crew was so powerful that it just absolutely swatted any single-seat ship out of the sky with ease, like it should, all right? Like it should, the tune would be very different. But this is an appeal to emotion. This is an appeal and an attempt to seem like a moderate. I'm not a moderate. I am not on the side of the single-seat fighter, and I am not on the side of the light fighter at all. I am on the side of multi-crew, team play, group effort, and the average Joe, not the quote-unquote elite of Star Citizen. Do not be fooled by this. So the next point that was raised in an attempt to seem like an intellectual and not some nerd who plays video games is the Pareto principle. And his principle is that the more people put effort in, the more they're going to excel and rise to the top, etc., etc. There is an element of truth to this, and that is fine. The issue is that this argument is being co-opted to try and say that Master Modes removes skill from the game. That is simply not true. The game is quote-unquote easier to understand, but I promise you that a bad player who is in the 20% will still lose to the good player who is a part of the 80% in this principle. This is not an argument. This is not an argument. This is simply an attempt, again, to appeal to emotion and to use the honeyed words and the romanticized words of skill and effort. These are all words that we as normal humans could probably understand and appreciate, maybe unless you're a NEET, in which case I envy you. But that was not the case with Star Citizen. It was not something that you could take time and learn at a reasonable pace. There's actually a post here on Spectrum that I want to bring out that I think perfectly sums up a counter to this, and even if this individual did not mean to say it. But it was posted by Captain Harlock. He says, and I quote, "Yeah, the worst thing that could happen to Star Citizen is almost forcing players to spend hours practicing in AC in order to be good enough to start to enjoy the PU. It would make the game lose a massive portion of its player base and is just bad all around. This is a hill I'll die on. No, the very best pilot in SC shouldn't comfortably beat 10 noobs ganging on him. If now with MM you can't be as good as you were before MM, it's just because you ain't good enough. So you know, get good and stop whining." I like what he said because it sums it up. That is what these mutants expect you to do. This is what these cretins expect you to do. They expect you to sit in the god-awful, poorly optimized minigame that is Arena Commander and toil away at practicing at this essentially Mario Party style game, and then go into the horribly optimized PU just so you can compete in a game which already takes way too much time to do the most basic frickin' things. Do you see how stupid that sounds? Does that make any sense to you? Are you a rational, normal human being? Do you live above ground? If so, you should not expect people to want to do what the quote-unquote elite are advocating that everybody does. That is a recipe, as Captain Harlock said, for disaster and a dead game. It's almost as if you would have to go and sit in aim labs for hours on end before you could log in to go play Deadlock. That sounds pretty friggin' stupid, doesn't it? I guarantee you if you had to do the sandbox training in Deadlock before you could log on and play against real players, the game probably wouldn't be as popular as it is. Let's wake up and smell the coffee, yeah? Let's stop being stupid. Let's put a little bit of effort into understanding how human beings work, which might be hard, since I think a lot of these people barely qualify as human beings. The next argument given is that tricording was not an exploit. Well, in the eyes of CIG and Yogi, it is and was an exploit. Was tricording something difficult to do? No. It was not a difficult maneuver to do. One of my most popular videos was about 60 seconds, and it explained how to do tricording, and it was very simple. Does that mean it was good for the game? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should leave something in the game. At some point, it interferes with the integrity of the product, and of course, hurts the accessibility of the product. For all you high skill cap enjoyers out there, which I am, by the way, a fan of skill, but esoteric skill cap enjoyers, let's put it that way. Where are all the arena shooters at? Where is Unreal? Where is Quake? Are these games still popular? Do people still play them despite their esoteric nature? They were quite difficult to play. They had a lot of movement tech. I covered in the video how John Carmack at one point considered bunny hopping to be an engine exploit, an unintended feature that he wanted to remove. He attempted to remove it. The die-hard SICK nerds complained. He left it in, despite also not agreeing with it. Gabe Newell, God bless that fat man, removed bunny hopping for CS Source, I believe it was, CS Source, and it has not been available in any of the games ever since. And no, jumping up and down is not bunny hopping. Bunny hopping was a very specific movement type that made you accelerate faster. Very similar to tricording. The removal of tricording does not remove the 6 degrees of freedom in the game. You still have 6 degrees of freedom. It does not matter how you spin it. You may still move in 6 degrees. You may not move at 6 degrees at 15 Gs in one direction, but you will still move in 6 degrees of freedom. Now, what's funny about this is might say, well, if it's not hard to learn, what's the harm in leaving it in? Because it's the only thing that people would do. It's all that you could do. Tricord away or tricord into fights. It was silly, and it was unintended, and it's gone. And it's not coming back, and nor should it come back. But to say that the 6 degrees of freedom has been removed because you cannot tricord, absolute nonsense. So no. And interestingly, there is a similarity to a game that may be well-known or not so well-known called Guns the Duel. This game enjoyed a brief amount of popularity, and it only began to die when a predominant style of play came out for this game called K-Style. K-Style was essentially a ton of movement and animation canceling, and it looked really stupid. And lo and behold, this game, Guns, died off. Because while people could maybe do it, or probably do it if they so desired, they simply did not want to do it. Because believe it or not, people don't like gimmicks. People don't want to do silly little gimmicks. And just because you're some sick nerd and you think that that adds skill or depth to the game, most normal people don't want to do that. I think SICK understands that, and that's why it's gone. So yeah, if you want to see an example of something stupid, look up K-Style compared to tricording. You'll probably understand why they were removed. Oh, and one last thing real quick about 6 Degrees of Freedom and not having tricord removing that 6 degrees. Descent, one of the most popular and well-known 6 Degrees of Freedom games in the 1990s, revolutionary title by the way, didn't have tricording. Just saying. So the next disingenuous argument against master modes that this individual has is that the new systems such as SCM mode, master mode, the afterburner speed, and regular SCM speed all make the game less user-friendly and more unintuitive. This is of course an attempt to appeal to emotion and influence the easily gullible. The reality is here that if we are going to say that we should keep the old flight model, which was far more complicated in an esoteric way, and the only reason why it failed was because of bad tutorials, then this other system, which is much more simple and easier to understand, simply needs better tutorials. How could you say, A1, that the old system failed because it didn't have tutorials to back it up, and this new system is more complicated, but then ignore tutorials? The new system is not more complicated. It's different, but it's not more complicated. Also, there is a level of intuitiveness that all of us can understand. We all understand what afterburner speed is. You don't have to be a sim player to understand the concept of an afterburner. It's like pushing the throttle down on a car, and it goes forward faster. Then you release the throttle, and it slows down. That's pretty intuitive. Far more intuitive than the old system. This is not an argument. I'm not going to waste much time on this. This is pure nonsense. The only thing I would agree with is that the switch between nav and SCM is a little unnatural, but overall, it's not that big a deal, and it doesn't bother me any. The next argument is the classic position/number-centric argument that Master Modes now favors numbers over skill. Why shouldn't something favor numbers over individual skill, especially in an MMO? That would be my question to you. And I would then say, before you get your panties in a twist, there comes a cutoff where numbers stop mattering or they don't matter as much. And that typically happens when you get to a higher echelon of numbers. For example, a 10v5, the 10 players is going to have a significant advantage over the 5. However, a 20 versus 30, the 30 might not have as much of an advantage over the 20 because a lot more macro decisions, macro skill, and macro leadership come into play. There is a cutoff for this. Whenever I hear the talk about numbers being the only thing that's going to matter, I hear somebody who is afraid of the larger organizations wielding their numbers like a blunt instrument and smashing these small and quote-unquote elite pilots. That was going to happen anyway. Let's face it, that's going to happen. And the way to keep those organizations in check is not through making the individual level of the gameplay unfun, unintuitive, aggravating, or esoteric, but rather implementing other systems such as logistics, upkeep, and things of that nature to keep those large organizations in check. And then finally, they go on to talk about how it's more of a DPS race or nose-to-nose tanking versus maneuver position gameplay. That's being worked on, but that's also a byproduct of a space game. It really is. Do you really think you're going to have people getting on tails and doing that things on a regular basis in a space game? Most likely not. What you guys want is Star Wars, which is a movie, and you're probably not going to get that. Almost every space game turns into nose-to-nose at some point, even under the old flight model. And that's the uncomfortable truth, is that even under the old flight model, it was nose-to-nose. And the only way to evade those shots was to accelerate in ridiculous directions at insanely high speeds to throw the pip off. I'm sorry, but that's reality. Quit pretending like this game was something amazing when it never really was when it comes to space combat. Get over yourself. So, in summary, do not be fooled by what these people say. They are not your superiors. They do not know better, and they are not going to argue in the best interest of you or the product as a whole. They are going to argue in the best interest of their brand and what keeps them going ahead, trying to make whatever meager earnings they could make over the dwindling popularity of Star Citizen YouTube revenue. These content creators are all the same. And you might say, but Buzz, aren't you the same? No, this is my hobby. I do this every once in a while. I put out an opinion piece. I run the least amount of ads, and I really don't get any money from this. I have a job. I'm a full-time employee, and I'm happy with what I do. It's simply a hobby. But Star Citizen is not in these people's best interest. They do not care about Star Citizen. They care about how they can mold and manipulate the developers to make Star Citizen into the game they want it to be so that they can take the most advantage of it to have the most success. And that is the reality of it. That is simply the truth. This is a classic case of player versus developer. And I guarantee you that the astroturfing you see on Reddit right now, and most importantly the Spectrum, mainly the Spectrum, are alts, people being mobilized and pointed in a direction to go brigade because they are mindless drones who don't know any better. And they're going to do what the big influencer, quote-unquote, tells them to do. So, in closing, Master Modes ain't perfect. It's going to get better, but it's also here to stay. So, as always, hit me up in the comments. Discord link is here on screen right now. Join the Discord. Come fight with me. I'm down for it. Or hang out. It's up to you. And as always, thank you for watching.